Hey, welcome to Mr. News Art Class. It's wonderful to see your smiling faces. Well, this video should be fun. As you can see before you here, I have 5 different brands of colored pencils. And some of them I've never used before, ever, and others I have. My goal for this video is just to try all of these together and see which one or ones I would recommend for different people for different purposes. And here, this is going to be my test illustration. I've just doodled out a real quick. This is not intended to be anything super fancy. It's just, I just want to see how these colors blend and stuff. So I've got a couple of different textures here to work with: tree, rock, rainbow, all sorts of things that I think will be a good test just to determine the overall usability of each colored pencil type. I'll be using the Crayolas in this top corner. I've got a lot of experience using those in the classroom setting, so I really don't need to test those out too much. Arteza I've never used before, so that one will be interesting. We'll see how that turns out. Blackwing I've never used before, so again, that'll be really interesting to see how it turns out. Prismacolors I know and love and trust and have used for a long time, since high school really. And Polychromos I know and love and trust, even though I've only used them a few times very recently. I really enjoy those colored pencils. But I got 2 in here I've never used before. We're just going to try to compare them all to each other, and then at the end I'll have a recommendation about, what you should get for, for different purposes. The verdict is in. Some of these really surprised me in a big way. So, for starters, Crayola colored pencils. Now, these are a harder core, and it's kind of crunchy. When you're talking about colored pencils, you've got soft core and hard core, and when we talk about the core, we're talking about the actual lead inside the pencil, right? Right, the center part, the core of the pencil, the part that actually does the coloring. Now, some colored pencils are a harder core, which means that, you know, they're not as soft and buttery feeling. And some people prefer that, some people don't. It really depends on detail versus blending. A hardcore pencil is better for detail work, and a soft core pencil is better for blending work. Now, these are a harder core, and it's kind of crunchy. I did not like the feel, the texture of that at all. They work for student work, elementary student work, where blending is not really needed. These are, I must say, fantastic when compared to like Rose Art or Crazy Art or any of those dollar store brands. These are the best of the student grade. But as an artist, using them to actually color something, they left a lot to be desired with blending and the texture of them. They just don't feel great on the paper. Okay? Arteza, next up. Arteza. Now, if you've seen my review of the Arteza gel pens, this surprised me a lot. The Arteza gel pens that I reviewed a while back, gosh, it's probably been 2 or 3 years. They sent me the gel pens and these colored pencils, and it's been a long time because I just didn't want to try. After I tried the gel pens, I didn't want to try anything else from Arteza, but these surprised me. They were actually really way better than I expected. There's the one thing is that the texture was not perfect. I would not call these expert. They are certainly better than the Crayolas. Certainly. But I think they've got a little ways to go before we call them expert. I would call these a mid-range. If you are middle school, high school, and you are trying to get into using colored pencils for blending, they actually did a decent job blending. They also felt better in the hand, the weight was better, things like that. And the colors were more vibrant than the Crayola. But if you are a professional artist using colored pencils, these are not for you. These are not an expert anything. The other thing that is just a minor thing, but like this is a fancy, nice case, metal case, but then the trays are floppy, flimsy. That's kind of weak. So Arteza, you surprised me with these. They are a lot better than your gel pens were. The big problem I had with the Arteza gel pens was that the colors did not match. Like the cap colors did not match at all with the colors themselves. But on these, the color of the outside of the pencil does match, at least with the colors I used today, does match pretty darn well with the color of the core. So these would be great for a student. Crayolas would be great for a student in elementary school. Artezas would be great for more advanced students. I would still not call it an artist grade by any means. Blackwing was another surprise. If you haven't seen my review of their pencil sharpener, this thing is the best pencil sharpener I have ever used, period, bar none. But these colored pencils left a lot to be desired. They're a hard core, and they didn't have the crunchy feel that the Crayolas had. These colored pencils would be great if you're writing and want different colored writing. They felt good in the hand. I do like the hexagon feel instead of the round. That is kind of nice if that's what you prefer. But a couple of things about these pencils that really, really just stood out as being not good for the purposes of creating artwork. One of those is that there wasn't a white to blend with. A lot of the blending I do is with a white going over things. There wasn't a white. Also, the gray isn't a gray, it's a silver, which is cool if you want silver, but if you want gray, that doesn't work, and I can't make a gray because I have a black, but I don't have a white. These are a hard core, so they're good for detail and line work, but they're not as good for blending, and I just did not have a good time blending with them. The rainbow area wasn't terrible, but like here, I didn't have a white to blend it with, and I didn't even want one. And then also for the girl's face, I tried to mix up like a skin tone out of it, and I ended up just going over it with brown because they just didn't blend at all. And then head to head, these last two. I mean, I knew going into it that these would be the best. These are the only two of the ones I've reviewed here today that I would call artist grade. Prismacolor has been my favorite since high school. They're the ones I learned how to draw with in high school with colored pencils. They're not as good as they were 20 years ago, 15 years ago. They're just not as good. Their colored pencils are not as good as they were 20 years ago. I know because I have a pack of 120 that was given to me when I graduated high school, and I have compared them to these, and they are just not as good as they used to be. These are the new ones, and I ranked these at a 3 for texture and a 4 for, backwards. A 4 for texture and a 3 for blending. They are super buttery smooth, which you would think makes them better for blending. But I actually found that even though these ones, the Faber-Castell Polychromos, were a harder core with a slightly less ideal texture, they actually blended better. And they had more vibrant colors, which that's what Prismacolor has always been known for. If you are an artist, a colored pencil artist searching for the best colored pencils for making art with, Faber-Castell's Polychromos are better than Prismacolors. I would even say that the Faber-Castell's, the Polychromos, are better than the Prismacolors from 20 years ago. So in the end, each of them has their place, but you decide which one works best for you. By the way, the paper that you're using does matter quite a bit with colored pencils or any materials. So the paper that I used today for all of these was a Strathmore 500 series Bristol that has the toothy texture, the vellum texture. This has been my favorite paper for a long time. The vellum texture for any blendable materials, and then the plate texture or smooth texture for inks and stuff. I'll leave a link to that paper and to each of these colored pencil types in the description below. Leave a comment if you have any questions or want to see more like this, or if you have your own preference of colored pencils.